9 experienced hikers walked into the Ural Mountains in February 1959. They were never supposed to die, but when search teams finally found their camp 3 weeks later, every tent had been torn open from the inside, and the bodies were found over a kilometer away in the snow, some of them barefoot. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident, and 60 years later, nobody has ever fully explained what happened that night. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student and experienced ski tourer. With him were 8 others, 7 men and 2 women, most of them students at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, all skilled in long-distance winter trekking. Their plan was a 16-day round trip through the northern Urals to a mountain called Otorten. Before they left, they took photos. Smiling, joking, packing gear onto sledges. One of them kept a diary, writing about the cold, the snow, and how excited they were for the trip. On January 27th, they set off from the last inhabited settlement and disappeared into the wilderness. The plan was simple. Reach Otorten, then send a telegram back to their sports club confirming they were safe. That telegram was expected around February 12th. It never came. At first, nobody panicked. Delays were common, bad weather, slow terrain. But by February 20th, with no word for over a week, the families demanded a search. Search parties, volunteers, police, and eventually the military fanned out across the region. On February 26th, a search team climbing the slope of a mountain called Cholat Shachol found something. In the local Mansi language, Cholat Shachol translates to one specific phrase: dead mountain. What the search team found was the group's tent, half collapsed, partially buried in snow. But it wasn't damaged by weather. The tent had been cut open from the inside in multiple places, as if someone, or several people, needed to get out immediately and didn't have time to find the exit. Footprints led away from the tent down the slope. Footprints from at least 8 people, made by feet in socks, some completely bare, in temperatures that night that dropped to nearly negative 25 degrees Celsius. Nobody runs into a Siberian winter night without shoes, not unless something inside that tent was more dangerous than the cold itself. The footprints led toward a tree line over a kilometer away, and that's where the first bodies were found. 2 of the hikers were discovered at the base of a large cedar tree, wearing only their underwear. The fire pit nearby had only a few small branches, as if they'd tried to build a fire and couldn't manage more than that. Branches up in the cedar tree itself were broken, up to a height of 5 meters, as if someone had climbed it, possibly to see something, to see what was coming from the direction of the tent. 3 more bodies were found in the area between the cedar tree and the tent, in positions that suggested they had been trying to make their way back. One of them was found in a position resembling someone protecting their head. That left 4 hikers still missing. It would take search teams another 2 months, until May, to find them. And what they found raised more questions than it answered. The final 4 bodies were discovered under 4 meters of snow, in a ravine further down the slope. They were the most dressed of the group, wearing clothing taken from the others who had already died, suggesting they were the last ones alive, trying to survive. But their injuries were the strangest part of the entire case. One victim had major chest fractures, the kind of force usually seen in a high-speed car crash. Another had a severe skull fracture. But here's the detail that has fueled debate for 60 years. There were no external wounds, no cuts, no bruising on the skin consistent with a fall or rocks or an avalanche. The force that crushed their bones from the inside left almost nothing on the outside. One woman was missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her lips. And when investigators tested the victim's clothing, several items came back with elevated levels of radiation. The official Soviet investigation closed the case in 1959 with a single, vague conclusion. The hikers died as a result of a compelling unknown force. No further explanation. The files were then classified, sealed away from public access for the next 30 years. So, what actually happened? Over the decades, dozens of theories have been proposed. Avalanche. A slab of snow could have collapsed onto the tent, forcing everyone to cut their way out and flee. But search teams found no clear avalanche debris at the scene in 1959, and an avalanche doesn't easily explain internal injuries with no external bruising or radiation on clothing. Military testing. The area was near zones used for Soviet missile and parachute mine testing. Some searchers reported seeing strange orange spheres of light in the sky around the time of the incident. Could a weapons test have gone wrong? And could the Soviet government have covered it up to avoid admitting it? Infrasound-induced panic. Certain wind conditions over that specific terrain shape can produce infrasound, sound below human hearing that's known to cause irrational fear and panic. Could the group have been overcome with sudden, inexplicable terror, strong enough to make them flee a warm tent into a freezing night without dressing? None of these theories fully explain everything. Not the cut tent, not the radiation, not the missing tongue and eyes, not the orange lights in the sky. In 2019, 60 years after the incident, Russian authorities reopened the investigation. After new analysis, officials concluded that the most likely cause was a delayed slab avalanche, a rare type that can occur on relatively gentle slopes, hours after disturbance with almost no visible debris left behind. It's a plausible explanation. Snow scientists have since run computer models showing this type of avalanche was possible on that exact slope, that exact night. But even the researchers behind this theory admit it doesn't fully explain the severity of the internal injuries. It doesn't explain the radiation. And there's one more detail that's almost never mentioned in official summaries. When investigators developed the film from the hikers' own cameras, one of the final photographs, taken right around the time they would have been in or near the tent that night, shows nothing recognizable. Just a blurry, overexposed frame, with what looks like a bright, glowing light source somewhere in the image. Nobody knows what they were photographing. It may have been an accidental shot, taken in the dark, in panic. Or it may be the last thing they saw. Here's what stays with me about this case. If it really was just an avalanche, a tragic but ultimately explainable natural event, why would the Soviet government classify the files for 30 years? Why give a vague, dismissive official cause instead of just saying avalanche in 1959? Maybe it's simpler than we think. Maybe Cold War paranoia meant any unexplained deaths near a military testing zone got automatically buried, regardless of the real cause. Or maybe there's still something about that night on Dead Mountain that we don't fully understand. 9 people went into those mountains. None of them came back. And 65 years later, we're still trying to figure out why they ran. What do you think really happened that night? Avalanche?